One up, one down. Frozen versus Just Saiyan coming up next. A battle between two players that are very respected for one, Frozen doing really well in Season 1 and doing well in Season 2, but also because I think he is the X Factor in Americas. I think he's usually a half step or maybe even a full step ahead of other people, maybe even to his detriment at times. Saiyan, he is the player that does... He's like the flawless player, right? He plays really well. Most of the time, you know, he did have a little misstep at World Championships, but in terms of his average number of mistakes, quite possibly the lowest in the region. Tends to play the good decks very often and do them extremely well. Head-to-head, the matchup does actually differ a lot, right? You have Frozen with his Warrior band. You have Saiyan with his Shaman band. And now we have Priest, Hunter, and Shaman versus Priest, Warlock, and Druid.
Yeah. 5 unique classes out of the 6 possible, with Priest being protected on both sides being the only overlap in both these players, at least for the decks that are available in the series, excluding bans. And taking a look at this, you can see the pick rate for Highlander Hunter. And obviously, the win percentage is empty right now. We're going to be filling that in as the season progresses. We're waiting for a significant sample size before we unleash that onto the world, so we don't have any, cries out for OP decks when it's a 2-game sample size. But I think Highlander Hunter is a pretty genius brain, and Dan and I talked about it. We featured the deck in our pre-show today, and that's for a reason. We think that it's much better positioned than it was, say, last week when the nerfs were fresh and when not as many players were bringing Priest, but I do think it's got its place in the metagame, and it's still a very powerful deck. So curious to see where Frozen's going to be able to unleash it here. And Frozen also home. Long travels for him. It felt like he was never going to leave Korea, but it looks like he's back in his humble abode.
Yeah, he tweeted that he took a couple weeks to just really have time for himself with his friends. Went to EDC Korea, had met up with some new and old buddies in Hearthstone, and said that it was the best 2 weeks of his life.
Wow.
And that's he's been through a lot. Frozen's traveled the world. He's organized tournaments. He's gotten second at the World Championships, and he's talking about the social experiences, the benefits of having friends.
Ooh.
And to which a lot of us were like, weird flex, but good for you.
Good old Priest Mirror, Dan.
Yeah, Priest Mirror is going to be really defining, and the fact that it seems like a lot of players are somewhat in unison about Priest effectiveness is very telling of what they feel about the metagame. I went back and went through all the bans and the picks for Europe now, and Shaman was banned a handful of times and now banned in this series. But, it makes sense given that Shaman is a really threatening class for everything that isn't Priest. Assuming that Priest isn't running Earthshocks. Taking a look at the deck lists here, do we notice any specific tech in the Priest decks here, or is it pretty standard straightforward?
I had Frozen's list somewhere here, but
is someone injured?
So we featured this deck. Frozen is running the pretty standard Blomsamdi lineup. It has 1 Acolyted Pain, 1 Silence, 1 Topsy-Turvy, and the 1-drops across the board for Blomsamdi. And their lineups are exactly the same, looking at Saiyans. So it's a full 30-card for 30-card mirror. This is the version of the combo Priest with Blomsamdi that was made popular by Hunter Ace, finishing rank 1 legend in August. And not many players have deviated from it going into this week. No surprise, considering I think this deck is the strongest version of Priest right now.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting because Europe and Americas, 15 out of 16 players brought combo Priest. The only player I believe not bringing it in the Americas is now Gidan.
Weird
Although
choice.
I could be mistaken here.
Quickly.
Meanwhile, in Asia Pacific, combo Priest only brought 5 out of 16 times, CJ. Very big difference in ideology.
Yeah. Oh, man. This matchup is all dependent on who takes the board early. And right now, it looks like that's going to be Just Saiyan. He's got the Beaming Sidekick plus Inner Fire. And you can see Frozen wince because he knows that this matchup is so volatile. And if you take control of the board early, it is very difficult for your opponent to wrestle it back from you outside of the craziest wall of Pyromancer plays you've ever seen, or dead draws from your side.
Looking pretty fire for Saiyan. Do want to clarify, by the way, the one player was Delay, who doesn't have
Delay,
Priest.
okay.
I was looking at Naokidown's lineup. He doesn't bring Druid. Him and Frozen are the two players not playing Druid this weekend. So, you know, there are some differences in the ideologies of what people want. But for the most part, Warrior, Priest, Shaman, Druid. Four most popular classes here. Frozen has to hope that the Psycho Pomp is able to bring him back into this game.
Oof.
I mean, Cleric doesn't even draw that many cards. Circle of Healing only gets to go for one, and your opponent gets declared immediately. Assuming you're not even dead.
As embarrassing as it is, I would concede here.
Why?
Just because these games can tilt you off the face of the earth, Dan. When you're behind the entire game, they are the most satisfying to win, but obviously Frozen's not going to, because all of these games matter with relegation on the line, with the final spot, the global finals on the line. But these ones are rough.
I mean, I understand if it's ladder. I think you're talking about from the ladder experience.
From the ladder experience.
In a competitive environment like this, you got to do your due diligence.
I concede very early, to be fair. I'm all about efficiency. Get in, get out. Take the dubs, forget the losses. I would be the worst competitive player in existence.
That is not true.
Someone injured?
After casting last week, TJ, that is definitely not true. But we've also seen some pickup
Speak to me.
from, and two of these players, Saiyan and Frozen, those were like the joke around about some play. I think overall, we've been a little bit harsh on them. They've been stepping it up a lot since the last few days of play that we'll be able to see. Frozen picks up the Psycho Pomp #2, so a Pomp's died, a Cleric's died. Injured Blade Master comes back. That's more along the lines of what Frozen's looking for, and he hasn't seen Saiyan go for a big punish. He saw Saiyan set up card draw, so in his mind, maybe there's opportunity for him to come back. Well, the moment Saiyan picks up a Northshire Cleric, this game blows wide open. It might even be just game over. I like that Saiyan's respecting this injured Blade Master as well.
Yeah. I mean, this matchup's not about pushing face damage early unless you're killing. Oh my! What? Oh, jeez.
Oh my goodness.
He can do it again.
Oh.
In the light's name.
One more time, but with feeling.
He's gonna save it for the Light Warden to push for lethal.
Oh yes, you're right.
Oh, jeez. Well, Pyromancer picked up for Frozen, but unfortunately with only one spell in hand. He kind of needs to go for Acolyte of Pain, while Pyromancer topsy-turvy hopes he picks up the spell. Looks like he's going to wait a turn.
Yeah, he's dead. He is super dead. Injured Blade Master now goes into him.
So it's 9 plus
so
8.
that, yeah. There's 10 on board minus the Light Warden. Every single heal adds 2 attack.
Plus
so
Topsy-Turvy adds 6 more attack. Divine Spirit adds 11 more attack.
Yeah, this has to be lethal.
There's
many times over.
Yeah.
This game is over. Plus, he has Divine Spirit. So
he didn't attack with his Light
Warden! It's okay. Does he still have lethal? I think he does. If he yes.
Neferset Ritualist.
Topsy-turvy
and Inner Fire.
Yes, it's okay. Elaborate BM. This is what Radiance does. Radiance likes to embarrass their opponents on camera.
Oh, jeez.
You've seen it here. Muzzy first, Saiyan second, playing the quest to complete priest cards. Saved. And I mean,
That's why you don't concede, Dan.
If we were to also be very real too, is that even if Saiyan lost his Light Warden for free, and Frozen got another turn, the game would have still been over.
Game would have still been over.
No answer to that 23-23.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where it's very easy to look at what just happened on ladder and think, my opponent is so bad at Hearthstone. A recent opponent would like to be your friend. It doesn't matter. The game was very much determined by the fact that Northshire Cleric picked up, and we were even calling it, like the moment he picks up Northshire Cleric with the Circle of Healing and the Pyromancer, game is over. Picked up the next turn, and that's when effectively game 1 went to Saiyan.
Yeah, just a rough moment there at the end, and that's kind of what we were talking about with cleaning things up a little bit. But he put himself in the position to where he could afford to kind of make that error and still be massively ahead. So just saying, 1-0.
All right, well, quick game number 1. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to find out if Saiyan can play more priest cards. I guess he can. It's Conquest.
The shadows are rising again, darker than they've ever been. As evil descends from the skies, the world cries out, how will we survive? Out of the hall of explorers, and up from the dusty tombs, they grab their whips and fedoras. These legends of the past know exactly what to do. There might be magic monsters, mummies in the markets, and ancient mysticism. There surely scorching deserts, adventure, monster of narcissism. High stakes think annihilation, obliteration of civilization. Now is the time to be brave. Evil's come to enslave, but this league's gonna save. Oh no!
Hello, my name is Frozen. I play for Team Liquid, and my Twitter handle is @LiquidFrozen. I came up with my username because it's very cold in Michigan, and I added the 0 inside the O because it looks cool. I'm most looking forward to being able to play at the highest level every single weekend, being able to compete against some of the best players in North America. I think regionally, performance-wise, Europe has been a step ahead of us, slightly better than America's. But I think that APAC, even though they have a lot of solid players, they are overall weaker than North America. So if I were to rank the regions, it would be EU first, NA second, and APAC third. If I could design a Hearthstone card, it would probably be 1 mana, 0/8. Whenever your opponent's rope burns, they take 5 damage. I've always tried to be the best and do whatever it takes. Hard work, a lot of practice. I think that's what really translates in Hearthstone as well.
My name is David Chan. In the game, I go by justsaiyan. My username is just kind of a pun, right? But over the years, I think it's grown to mean a lot more to me. Playing Hearthstone for 4 to 5 years, I've probably won like 35,000 games, which means I've lost like 30,000 games. So definitely going back and forth and picking up after every loss. And that's kind of what the anime embodies, right? Is like you lose a fight, you almost die, and then you come back stronger. So being in Grandmasters, especially coming to the summit and everything, it feels like you have just a wide, diverse range of amazing players. And now it's, at least at the start here, it feels like we have a new responsibility to represent Hearthstone, to represent how fun and competitive that this game can be to the best that we can. So for me, the X factor has to be, I think, just I'm good at finding an edge where other players aren't exactly looking, and then trying to drive as much as I can into that so that I have an even bigger edge at the end of the day. Personal goals for the year: get into the 2 spots from North America to make it to the grand finals this year. I mean, I'm saying this like right after Worlds, but I'm just dying to get back in there,
Frozen on the Shaman, Just Saying on the Druid. This is game number 2 of our second match today. We're kind of chugging along here. Priest makes matchups go a lot faster. Or perhaps it is the absence of the Warrior. We'll find out. I mean, Saiyan is playing what looks like to be a non-Warrior lineup. What do you think about non-Warrior lineups, TJ? Besides the fact that our days go a lot faster.
Warriors struggled a lot last week. A lot of that was skewed by the fact that we did have a few bomb warriors that just weren't performing. But there's definitely no doubt that it was worse position last week. However, if you consider a lot of the decks that were brought this week with like Combo Priest and Zoo Warlock, then Warrior starts to look a little better. But it is exploitable because it's been around for so long, because people know its weaknesses. It is exploitable. And so I understand the bring, and I also love the Zoo Warlock bring, because I feel like that deck, it beats Priest and it beats Druid, and those are the 2 decks that you're probably expecting to see the most of. Whereas Warrior can kind of struggle with the Druid while it beats Priest. So kind of an interesting scenario that we're in there. But let's get into this one. Frozen again on the Shaman, Saiyan again, as you mentioned, on the Druid. This matchup, interesting. Last week, I think we were pretty much in overwhelming consensus that the Druid was favored. But I've heard some rumblings, and doing some testing myself, I do think that it can tend to go the other way more than I had originally thought. I would still put it Druid favored, but only very slightly. Especially now that more players are taking in the double mind control tech, which I think has a lot of game. Also, former champ. If you have former champ in your lineup, it just makes the matchup so much easier against Druid, because at any point you can unleash a couple 5/5s later on the game, which can be pretty devastating for Druid to have to deal with. So I think the evolution of gameplay and an evolution of players' lineups makes this matchup a lot better for Shaman, I guess is a better way to put that.
Well, I have some interesting statistics for you today.
Unleash some statistics.
What do you think Shaman's win rate was last week after the patch? This is post-patch. 15.0.4. Is it below 50%? Is it at near around like a ±1%? Or is it above 50%?
I would say
Grandmasters.
I would say last week it was near 50%.
It was below 50% at around 45, I believe. 47%.
That's near 50%.
Well, yeah, that's fair enough.
I would say this week it's above.
Well, you're saying it will be above.
It will be above.
What do you think Warriors' win rate was last week?
Like 30%.
It was 50%. But for Control Warrior, for Bomb Warrior, it was 18%. Bomb Warrior got rushed, and it is no longer the ideal choice for lineups. People who bring Bomb Warrior have very specific things in mind. In Asia Pacific, I'd argue, Bomb Warrior is pretty good because there's a lot of Reno hunters out there. And, Reno hunters, they're pretty scary.
Yeah.
But in Americas, when people are playing Priests and Druids a lot, I think Bomb Warrior's possibly a bad bring.
Yeah, at least over a Control Warrior. Right, like you can be successful with a lineup against those decks that does have Control Warrior.
Well, I think for reference, nobody brought Bomb Warrior this weekend in America.
I think that's smart. I think that's really smart. I mean, the players that brought it last week got punished. Probably felt pretty bad about that choice. Quest complete for Saiyan. 4 out of 6 for Frozen here. Very close, and he does have a very powerful play next turn with Quest Coin, Former Champ, and Evolve to have 2 5/5s and a random 6-drop. Also merit for holding on to the Mutate for the Giggling Inventor, because that 8-drop, it's a much bigger upgrade from a 2/1 than the 6-drop is from a 1/1 on average. But Frozen actually going to unleash the Former Champ now.
Sting like a bee.
Just to kind of put on the pressure. And the Mutate, okay.
None shall pass. There is little time.
Frozen just want to pile on this aggression as early as he can.
Yeah, I think early aggression is good against a Druid, given that they give you that lead-in time. Interestingly enough, both players tend to, both classes tend to finish quests around the same time if you're able to go all in. And it's all about the catch-up mechanics of Druid. Do they have the Starfalls? Do they have the Oasis Surgers? Even the opportunity to nourish into a Nubisat Defender is often a big swing. In this case, Saiyan needs to deal with both ends of the board here in order to make sure he doesn't get punched out of the game, because Shaman does have some good aggression tools. War Druid Lodi plus Wrath. Deadly combination. Ooh, Starfall number 2. Is there a better option than that?
No.
Doesn't look like it. Does he even attack with his 4/6?
No. I think you're willing to take that 6. There's a lot of healing in Druid with Ferocious Howl and Hidden Oasis. And Starfall will most likely, with that additional spell damage, deal with an entire board being frozen. Haunting Visions or Lava Burst. Ooh, Stormbringer. Wow, okay. So Stormbringer could change things a little bit, but Frozen will lose his entire board next turn, and I think he realizes that if he does get Starfall, Stormbringer's going to be a dead card in his hand for a long time.
Right.
And so he wants to make sure that he has a board next turn to follow up on instead of trying to bank on, at some point in the game, being able to hit a Stormbringer.
Saiyan going to be able to use a Starfall and clear off the board no matter what he chooses. Or no matter how he ordered this, rather. I wonder how much he wants to protect his 3/5. He does have another War Druid Lodi, but if he plays a Nubisat Defender, he loses that Lodi off the flip. Saiyan even thinking about whether or not he should drop a second Defender. 3 minions and the Mind Control tech dynamic is around that safe zone. And this is where it starts to become really hard for the Shaman. If you look at data, Druid has had the edge over Shaman pretty significantly, and I think it's largely because of things like this. Druid's comeback potential onto the board is really high. And right now, Frozen doesn't look like he has easy tools to win back the board. He would have to use his Kobold lackeys in order to do so, and that's not what he wants to be using them for. He has a lot of burst damage in the hand. Life Drinker, Kobold lackeys, Lava Burst. 19 damage from the hand. Maybe in his mind, is there a way for Frozen to just go for the lethals instead?
If he Life Drinkers here, it does set him up for a Life Drinker out for lethal if Saiyan had no healing. But the odds that he has no healing at this point is pretty low because Hidden Oasis and Ferocious Howl. And potentially a card from the Worthy Expedition can all punish him. So I think that he might think that because Saiyan's low on resources a little bit, that if he can dodge and nourish and develop the board, then he might be in a position where he can fight back. And that's the kind of draw that Frozen needs from Saiyan to kind of come back into this one, because that's a pretty weak board to Starfall. And if he doesn't Starfall, what is he doing? Playing a 4-mana flooped Nubisat Defender? That doesn't seem very worthwhile.
Yeah, and I think the threat of Barista and other cards that can pick up synergy with the Kobold Lackey is very much on the forefront of Saiyan's mind. Part of what makes the Shaman scary is that even with just a minor amount of threats, they still present quite the conundrum, right? You want to clear off these 1/1s, but without your Druid hero power, it becomes really inefficient.
Yeah.
And that's a trade-off. Frozen doesn't exactly have the best draw either, right? We see that he's struggling with the Questing Explorer pickup on the top. That doesn't do anything. Both players getting an awkward amount of draws in this mid-stage of the game here.
Which makes it interesting. First player to draw
like
some
it.
gas is the player who's going to kind of pull ahead here.
Yeah, Nourish for Saiyan, and it's Novice Engineer, I believe, for Frozen. And now Saiyan's committing a lot of his resources to the board. The Floop, the Worthy Expedition being revealed. Saiyan needs a lot of help here, and Frozen picks up yet another awkward card.
Well,
Guess the good news is that Frozen can maybe just play defense for a while, clean up this 3/1, Lava Burst 3/5, pass the Box Slasher. Perfectly okay. Oh my goodness. Big time draw here for Just Saying.
The best draw on his deck by a large margin.
Oh my goodness. Is it not the second Nourish, though? Is it Hidden Oasis instead? I think it might be for the tempo. I like the tempo here.
Yeah, the tempo is kind of key here. Saiyan is mounting a lot of pressure, actually. I mean, there's 12 damage on board. But this is a big board development for Frozen. He's able to get the 5/6 Mogu Flesh Shaper down. And as long as he just needs to pick up some draw.
Right, because Saiyan could go for a very defensive plan and win in the long game. He did pick up Chef Nomi, but this is not exactly the matchup he needs for. And the moment Zephyrus becomes active, things get real spicy.
Yeah,
because now he can duplicate it. Yeah, he can duplicate the Zephyrus, he can do a bunch of other stuff. This Crystal Merchant drawing deeper into the deck. How many cards does Saiyan need to draw in order to activate Zephyrus the Great?
It's just Oasis Surger after that swipe pickup.
Swipe also a big inclusion too.
Yeah.
These lackeys, they need to come up big.
Witchy Lackey, great for the Giggling Inventor here. Especially considering Frozen most likely has to trade in this Mogu Flesh Shaper to kind of clear off some of the board. But he also gets Ethereal Lackey, so we're starting to generate some value here for Frozen. Earthquake.
Earthquake is weird though because he's like kind of ahead on board.
But you can run the Druid out of stuff. Saiyan is not playing the version with King
Sure.
Phaoris.
So Earthquake is interesting, but that's like a very pessimistic view of like, oh, Chef Nomi's going to come down. I'm going to clear things off.
Yeah.
I wonder if Plague of Murlocs also has viability, given that he's ahead. And if you're ahead on the board with the Murlocs, they can synergize each other pretty well. Bog Slosher gives you some room to actually play with the Giggling Inventor or the Ethereal Lackey. Earthshock his own Lackey in order to upgrade the Giggling Inventor. Bulldozer. Starfall. Okay. Starfall is a clear.
Yeah, swipe and Starfall.
That is a big swing. And now Saiyan looks primed to close this game out. I don't think Frozen got enough off his Ethereal Lackey. He needs Shutterwalk to come off the top.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he is dead.
And even then, the amount of like board impact he's been able to get with his Battlecry so far has not been that good. So
well, he does have a board clear with the Sandstorm Elemental, Bog Slosher, replay the Sandstorm Elemental. But I mean, that's just a drop in the this is a drop in the bucket. There's so much more that he needs. So much more that he needs to do and needs to have. Saiyan has Elise and has Zephyrus active.
I mean, he's got everything. Like he's
Right.
Even if this board were somehow able to be miraculously removed from Frozen, all of these board states, and he healed up enough to dodge lethal damage from Zephyrus, then Chef Nomi would come out.
Keep it the Grove.
I must
Silences,
safeguard
then
the
deals 2 damage. Good knowledge of interactions, of how that would work. Frozen running on fumes, picks up Evil Totem. That's not going to do anything. This looks like it's a potential lethal here. But I think if he uses the Lava Burst and he uses Life Drinker, Frozen's okay. I don't think Frozen has any combination of draws that could bail him out. It would have to be exactly Shutterwalk and his opponent not be able to deal with it. That's a concede. 2-0 Radiant. Back W's. Just Saying closes out 2-0 over Frozen.
Yeah. And he left.
And he's out.
He's out. Oh, getting the
And he's
headset.
back.
Smart
Oh.
move. Smart move, Saiyan. Smart plays all around. Yeah, the you can see I said going to this week that it seemed like Shaman players were evolving their game plans a little bit and taking more wins against Druid than we saw last week. Especially considering the techs, I think the Druid lineup has been pretty similar for a while, where Shaman has changed out a lot of cards, and the double mind control tech is popular now. I think that they have more game against Druid, but obviously, Druid's still favored. Once they have that one swing turn and take the board, it's very hard to wrestle it back. And if you're not able to do some crazy burst out of hand to kill them and dodge heal and Ferocious Howl, then it's going to end up looking like that.
Yeah, Frozen with the no Druid lineup, not able to have access to Druid himself, but you also got to see the struggles of the Shaman deck because it didn't hit the gas it needed, and Saiyan got back-to-back nourishes. He didn't need a second nourish immediately, but it was also just as crucial to draw deeper into the deck, get all those really powerful moments, and then end the game with presenting the threats the way he did.
Yeah, it was pretty well done also by Saiyan, realizing that he needed a nourish to kind of get back and not kind of being greedy with his resources, throwing at the floop, trying to wrestle for board as long as possible to buy himself the time to get to the point where he could pick up some card draw. Because he had a lot in his deck still. It was just, okay, need to keep wrestling for board, keep waiting until I can go for that one big swing turn to end the game.
Yeah, it's a good balance that he struck, right? Because he would play Lodi and then Wrath but not attack, and then said, you know what, I need to actually attack in this position and wrestle back the board and play my Anubis Thought defenders, even though he had no guarantee of a follow-up. And I think that's just really good recognition of how the game state is developing. And to an experienced player, seems fairly obvious, but there's a lot of players out there that I see on ladder that still kind of mess this up. They're not sure how greedy to be with huge potential cards like Floop, like Elise, like Zephyrus. These are high potential for big swings in Druid, and I feel like I see people throw away too liberally or be too conservative. I mean, even look at Saiyan's Starfall
on a
couple
2/3 and a
of
1/1. Yeah.
That's also a play that was very intentional to develop and also force Frozen to have the Novice Engineer and to have all the luxury of those plays.
Yep.
And, if things were a little bit different, let's say Saiyan didn't develop as aggressively, what if Frozen had that opportunity to pick up the Stormbringer and be able to, swing the board dramatically? And Druid can't do much against that, right? But one of the biggest things about King Phaeorus and why it's even included in so many deck lists is its strength in the mirror. Druid can't deal with a bunch of 5/5s very easily. They can deal with maybe 2 5/5s with Oasis Surger, or if they happen to have double Oasis Surger. But that's so far into the game, it's very tricky.
Yeah, and against Shaman, you play King Phaeorus, it's cool. Hero power, double mind control tech.
Right.
Your board is now mine.
Yep.
So that's why we're seeing even players move away from King Phaeorus in the matchup and going for a much more early board-centric matchup, even playing mind control techs themselves. For to help against the mirror matchup. If they're lacking King Phaeorus, they need game against their opponents, for instance. But I think maybe 10 to 20% of the players don't even, maybe even more, don't even include King Phaeorus in their Druid lineups.
Well, Frozen doesn't have King Phaeorus because he doesn't even have the Druid. Let's go ahead and check in with Saiyan, who is waiting on the line for a brief interview. Saiyan, are you there?
Hey, what's up, guys?
Cool. So 2 Radiance members playing, 2 Radiance wins, 2 2-0s back-to-back there. A little bit of a trip up. It seems like Priest quests all around for both Muzzy and Saiyan. You just want to play as many Priest quest cards as possible. Gotta get that 60 gold.
I think the early game was what really mattered in the mirror, so we nailed that. Nailed the mulligan. Got the inner fire. Got things off to a good start. It's not like I didn't miss lethal that turn, right? So it's the same result.
Absolutely, that's right.
Yeah.
Saved is the term that we were saying. Nicely done. Going up against a no Druid lineup, do you have any thoughts about that over on Frozen's end? Because he did bring the Reno Hunter instead. That mix you up?
It gave me some good queue possibilities, I think, going to game 2. After winning Priest Mirror, I think it became more obvious, because Frozen probably felt very down at that point in the match. It was unlikely he was going to queue Priest again, so it's easier for me to read, because Druid is just good against his lineup then, except for the Priest. But he needs to get a win somehow, I think, with either the Shaman or Hunter, and then revert back to Priest taking on Druid or something. So the Q strategy definitely changes up a lot there when he doesn't have Druid in his lineup, I think. And it also doesn't like a ban for me.
Got it. And so Reno Hunter, he's the only player to bring Reno Hunter, and I kind of hope that Frozen does well in the second match so we can ask about it. Did you have any game plan oriented around that, given its popularity in Asia Pacific?
I don't know. Pretty bad deck. I just beat it.
Fair enough. No fear. TJ, any questions for Sam?
No, I don't think so. Wow.
So
Nothing's coming to mind.
it seems like Radiance has these weeks where they do super well, and then some weeks where they don't do super well, and it's kind of like one or the other.
Yeah.
How's the morale, or what's the mindset there? I know you've prepped with Muzzy, but you also prep separately, and you also disagree on lineups a lot, given that you have different opponents. Can you share a little bit more insight about how the season's developing for the two of you?
I mean, there's only one big difference. I think everyone in the practice group thinks Priest is good now, at least. So they've got me on board on there. But the Zoo Warlock, I don't know. I've been bringing it. I think it has good matchups, but it's a tough one to call. Zoo's very high rolly, and I don't think Casper or Muzzy really like to experiment with it. But I'm a risk taker on the Zoo front. I've always liked Zoo Warlock, so I decided to bring it. It also has a good matchup spread, so why not?
Yeah, at least statistically, things seem to back up Zoo. Although it doesn't seem like too many Highlander Zoo Warlocks out there, because that's where the data truly goes. Everyone's
Disappointingly.
like, Highlander Zoo Warlock is like a couple percentages better, like maybe even top of tier 2, bottom of tier 1. And I'm like, there's no way it's that good. And then all the data implies that Zoo Warlock just is worse. I don't know. It's weird.
Is it that good, Sam?
I mean, I have it on good faith that the Highlander Zoo Warlock is not good. Actually, I was talking to Will. I was prepping with him, and he said his friend from the tennis team back in high school invented Highlander Zoo Warlock. So and we both agreed that we were not going to play it at that point. So
two things. Yes, his friend did play Highlander Warlock, because I played against his friend in high school on ladder. His friend was top 10 legend with it.
Wow, you played against his friend in high school? So he was like 8 years old?
I know. He wasn't even born. Second thing, I find it really funny that this kid's in college for 1 week and saying, yeah, back in high school, I played with this kid. It's like, that was like a few weeks ago. Anyway, Sam, you're not amnesiac, but thank you for sharing that wonderful anecdote. Congrats on the victory. Good luck in your match later this weekend.
thank you, guys.